Hello everybody, welcome to jurycentral.com online classes for law exams. So today I will be discussing with you the best Supreme Court judgments of the month January 2021. So let us start. So in this case of Rajiv Suri versus Delhi Development Authority, Supreme Court gave a go-ahead to Central Vista project in a 2:1 verdict. The Supreme Court approved the Central Vista project, paving the way for the government to start construction working on one of its ambitious projects that is estimated to be worth over rupees 20,000 crore. A three-judge bench of A.M. Khanwilkar, Dinesh Maheshwari and Sanjeev Khanna justices has by a 2:1 verdict has given a go-ahead to the Central Vista project. As per the government, the project, which plans to build a new parliament building, is necessary for the creation of a larger working space for efficient functioning of the parliament and for integrated administrative block for ministries, departments presently spread out at different locations, including on rental basis. So this project is actually required to integrate all the ministries and departments which are integrated at all over the place. Then in its words, the Supreme Court said, "We are compelled to wonder if we, in the absence of a legal mandate, can dictate the government to desist from spending money on one project and instead use it for something else." That's what the petition sought from the Supreme Court. Or if we can ask the government to run their offices only from areas decided by this court, or if we can question the wisdom of the government in focusing on a particular direction of development. We are equally compelled to wonder if we can jump to put a full stop on execution of policy matters in the first instance without a demonstration of irreparable loss or urgent necessity. The court felt that the petitioner failed to demonstrate the irreparable loss or urgent necessity if the project is given a go-ahead, or if we can guide the government on moral or ethical matters without any legal basis. In light of the settled law, we should be loath to venture into these areas. Then what the majority held, let us understand. There is no infirmity in the grant of no objection by the Central Vista Committee or approval by the Delhi Urban Art Commission as per the DUAC Act 1973, and C. prior approval by the Heritage Conservation Committee under clause 1.12 of the building bylaws for Delhi 2016. Also, the recommendation of environmental clearance by expert appraisal committee and grant thereof by MOEF, that is Ministry of Environment and Forest, is just and proper and in accordance with law, including the 2006 notification. The project proponent may be set up smoke tower, that's what the court directed, of adequate capacity as being integral part of the new parliament building project, and the additional use smoke guns at the construction site throughout the construction phase is in progress on the site. So the smoke guns will be used to contain the pollution that would occur during the construction of the parliament building. Justice A.M. Khanwilkar, writing for himself, and Justice Dinesh Maheshwari, however, said authorities executing the project will have to get clearance from the Heritage Conservation Committee, rejecting the center stand that the approval was to be taken subsequently. The court also said the exercise undertaken by the central government in change of land use of the project's master plan 2021 is legal and valid. So the court has actually upheld the change in the use of land which has been proposed in master plan 2021 as legal and valid. But Justice Khanna dissented from the majority opinion, while two judges on the bench upheld the government's decision to redevelop the Central Vista. Justice Khanna, in a separate ruling, disagreed on aspects relating to public participation in decision making, failure to take prior approval of the Heritage Conservation Committee, and the order passed by the Expert Appraisal Committee. So on this one, Justice Khanna dissented, as there was no prior approval of the Heritage Conservation Committee was taken before changing the use of land. He said that the right to make objections and suggestions will also include the right to have intelligible and adequate information regarding the proposal. So he actually didn't find it right to deny asking for objections and suggestions from public. Then in its words, mere uploading of the gadget information giving the present and the proposed land use with plot numbers was not sufficient compliance, but rather an exercise violating the express as well as implied stipulation that is necessity a requirement to make adequate and intelligible disclosure. He said, adding that adjudication by courts cannot be a substitute for public participation before and at the decision making stage. So he actually didn't find it right to not allow public participation in the Central Vista project. On permission granted by the Central Vista Committee regarding the change of land use, Justice Khanna said, reading of the minutes doesn't show fair and independent application of mind that the request of the member representing Indian Institute of Architects for detailed facts was also ignored. On the aspect of environmental clearance, the judge said the agency concerned had given a non-speaking order. The judge also held that prior approval of the Heritage Conservation Committee was necessary for such projects. So as no permission, no prior approval was taken from Heritage Conservation Committee, so the Justice Khanna said that it was actually very much necessary for giving a go ahead with the project. Then he also issued certain directions like the central government authority would put on public domain on the web intelligible and adequate information along with drawings, layout plans with explanatory memorandum etc. within a period of 7 days of passing of the directions. Then anyone desirous of filing suggestions, objections may do so within 4 weeks from the date of the publication. Objections, suggestions can be sent by email or to the postal address which would be indicated mentioned in the public notice. So the court also invited the suggestions and objections, if any, from the public, and that has to be done upon an publication within 4 weeks in a newspaper or in any other information source. And also the objection and suggestions can be sent by email or to the postal address which would be indicated mentioned in the public notice. Then again, Heritage Conservation Committee would pass a speaking order setting out reasons for the conclusions. So Heritage Conservation Committee was also given a right to take the objections into its consideration while deciding the question of approval and permission, and it would also have to pass a speaking order setting out the reasons for the conclusions. And further, the order of the EAC, that is Environment Appraisal Committee, report dated 22nd of April 2020 and the environment clearance by the Ministry of Environment and Forest dated 17th of June 2020 was set aside by these directions, and EAC has been requested to decide the question on environment clearance within a period of 30 days from the date of copy of this order received without awaiting the decision on the question of change modification of land use. Speaking and reasoned order would be passed. So the challenge, so let us understand the challenge, why it was challenged. According to the proposal, the redevelopment of the Central Vista area will involve construction of a new Parliament House, a new residential complex for the Prime Minister and Vice President, and 10 administrative buildings for all government ministries. It also includes converting the existing north and south block into museums. The project also proposes redevelopment of the Central Vista that connects Rajpath to the India Gate. So this is all about the Central Vista project. The petitioners before the Supreme Court challenged a notification issued by the Delhi Development Authority on 21st of December 2019 regarding changes in land use for the redevelopment. So the changes in land use by a notification of DDA was challenged in the Supreme Court. While issuing notices on the petition, the Apex Court had refused to stay the project but made it clear that its validity will be subject to the outcome of the petitions before it. So initially it actually refused to stay the project and it went on to hear the petition. Broadly, the petitioners argued that DDA was not vested with the power to bring change to land use, assailing the alterations envisaged by the centre. There was also a challenge to the manner in which public hearings were held before notifications were issued to change the land use. So a challenge was made in which public hearings were held before notification were issued to change the land use. It was actually believed that no public hearings were held before issuing the notifications that they're changing the use of the land, it was argued that hearings were a mere formality devoid of any meaningful consequences. So it was also argued that even if any hearings were held or have been held, it was mere a formality devoid of any meaningful consequences. Environmental concerns due to redevelopment were also highlighted by the petitioners before the top court. Then the next case is in this a very important judgment. In this, the Supreme Court held that conception that housemakers do not add economic value to the household is a problematic idea. Future prospect must be granted in case of motor accident of a non-earning victim. So with this decision, Supreme Court has actually made a significant judgment regarding the contribution of the housemakers in the Indian economy. So let us see. The case citation is Kirti versus Oriental Insurance Company Limited. In a case where the three-judge bench of N.V. Ramana, S.A. Nazir and Surya Kant justices increased the total motor accident compensation of rupees 22 lakhs awarded by the Delhi High Court to 33.20 lakhs after a motor vehicle accident claimed the lives of a man and his pregnant wife, leaving behind his parents and two children aged merely 3 and 4 years. Justice N.V. Ramana took the liberty to write a concurring opinion with respect to the issue of calculation of notional income for homemakers and the grant of future prospect with respect to them for the purposes of grant of compensation. I hope you understood the background. So in this, it's a case involving motor accident, and the compensation was enhanced to 33.20 lakh from 22 lakhs. And in this incident, in this event, or say in this case, to lives of a man and his pregnant wife and their two children aged 3 and 4 years. So that means both the couple died, leaving behind their two minor children. And this judgment is very important because it is written by the present Chief Justice N.V. Ramana. So below are certain facts and figures highlighted by Justice Ramana in his judgment. In India, according to the 2011 census, nearly 159.85 million women stated that household work was their main occupation as compared to only 5.79 million men. So there are actually nearly 159.85 million women who are engaged in household work. As per the report of the National Statistical Office of the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Government of India, called Time Use in India 2019, this is a report, reflects that on an average, women spend nearly 299 minutes a day on unpaid domestic services for household members versus 97 minutes spent by men on average. So an average 299 minutes a day spent by a domestic household women for unpaid domestic services. For these domestic services, they are not paid. The need for fixing notional income for a homemaker, that's what Justice Ramana said. Justice noticed that the sheer amount of time and effort that is dedicated to household work by individuals who are more likely to be women than men is not surprising when one considers a plethora of activities a housemaker undertakes. However, the conception that housemakers do not work or that they do not add economic value to the household is a problematic idea that has persisted for many years and must be overcome. Therefore, the issue of fixing notional income for a homemaker serves extremely important functions. So, Justice Ramana said that a homemaker actually contributes a lot in the economic value to the household, but their work is not recognized because they are actually engaged in an unpaid work, and which is problematic and which is not welcome. And therefore, he issued directions for fixing a notional income for a homemaker. Therefore, serves extremely important function. Rationale behind the awarding of future prospects. So let us see. It was noticed by Justice Ramana that the rationale behind the awarding of future prospect is no longer merely about the type of profession, whether permanent or otherwise, although the percentage awarded is still dependent on the same. The awarding of future prospect is now a part of the duty of the court to grant just compensation, taking into account the realities of life, particularly of inflation, the quest of individuals to better their circumstances and those of their loved ones, rising wage rates, and the impact of experience on the quality of work. So he wants to say that the rationale which was used before before awarding any future prospect about the type of profession the person is engaged in is actually not true in its entirety. There are other factors also which needs to be taken into account for awarding of future prospects. The notional income for non-earning victims, it said that the principle of awarding of future prospect must apply with equal vigor, particularly with respect to homemakers. Once notional income is determined, the effects of inflation would equally apply. No one would ever say that the improvement in skill that come with experience do not take place in the domain of work within the household. So it is not right to say that a domestic work doesn't involve any skills. Of course, it is also a type of work within the household that actually comes with experience. So what are the observations of Supreme Court? Let us sum up. Grant of compensation on a pecuniary basis with respect to a homemaker is a settled proposition of law. Taking into account the gendered nature of household with an overwhelming percentage of women being engaged in the same as compared to men, the fixing of notional income of a homemaker attains special significance. It becomes a recognition of the work, labor and sacrifices of homemakers and a reflection of changing attitudes. It is also in furtherance of our nation's international law obligations and our constitutional vision of social equality and ensuring dignity to all. So with this judgment, it actually recognizes the domestic work which is done by a homemaker, and it actually involves a lot of labor and sacrifices. And also these obligations and our constitutional vision of social equality and ensuring dignity to all is reflected in our international law. Then various methods can be employed by the court to fix the notional income of a homemaker depending on the facts and circumstances of the case. The court should ensure while choosing the method and fixing the notional income that the same is just in the facts and circumstances of the particular case, neither assessing the compensation too conservatively nor too liberally. So these are the factors that need to be taken while awarding compensation in case of non-earning member. The granting of future prospects on the notional income calculated in such cases is a component of just compensation. Then the next one is very important judgment in which the Supreme Court actually stated the implementation of 3 farm laws, and this issue is still doing rounds in media. So in this, the court said court cannot be said to be completely powerless to grant stay of any executive action under the statutory enactment. So I have already discussed this case law when I have taken one session on the landmark judgments which have been delivered by former Chief Justice of India S.A. Bobde, but there I only explained it in short. Now I will deal with the case law in detail. So first of all, the case citation is Rakesh Vaishnav versus Union of India. The 3-judge bench of S.A. Bobde, Chief Justice, and A.S. Bopanna and V. Rama Subramanian justices states the implementation of farm laws until further orders. What are the 3 farm laws? Let us see. 3 categories of petitions have been filed before the law, all revolving around the validity or otherwise of 3 farm laws, namely, the first one is Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020. Second is Essential Commodities Amendment Act 2020. And the third one is Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act 2020. So these 3 are very important. So do remember and keep it in mind, the 3 farm laws. Then we'll come to categories of petitions. So the first category of petitions challenges the constitutional validity of the farm laws. A petition under Article 32 challenging the validity of the Constitution, 3rd Amendment Act 1954, enabling the central government also to legislate on a subject which was otherwise in the state list, has also been included within the category of petitions, and another category of petitions included the ones which support the farm laws on the ground that they are constitutionally valid and beneficial to the farmers. And the third category included the ones filed by individuals who are residents of the National Capital Territory of Delhi, as well as the neighbouring states, claiming that the agitation by farmers in the peripheries of Delhi and the consequent blockade of roads, highway leading to Delhi infringes the fundamental rights of other citizens to move freely throughout the territories of India and the right to carry on trade and business. So like you all have seen in the news that since many months the farmers are staging protest on the outskirts of Delhi, and also there are several news which says that they are blocking the roads and actually the passages, they're actually blocking the passages and making difficulty for other persons or other carriers to move freely on the highway. The implementation of the three farm laws, Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020, we have already done it. As a consequence, the minimum support price system in existence before the enactment of the farm laws shall be maintained until further orders. So this is the actual demand of the farmers. A minimum support price system in existence before the enactment of the farm law shall be maintained until further orders. In addition, the farmers' land holding shall be protected. No farmer shall be disposed or deprived of his title as a result of any action taken under the farm laws. And Supreme Court has directed, first of all, the interim order to stay the latest farm laws, and also it has ordered the minimum support price shall be maintained until further orders, and also the farmers' land holding shall be protected. Then the negotiating committee. So Supreme Court has also formed a negotiating committee which will try to bring a solution between the farmers and the government, because until now no concrete solution has been taken place between the farmers and the government talks. A committee comprising of Shri Bhupinder Singh Maan, so later this person resigned, National President Bharatiya Kisan Union and All India Kisan Coordination Committee, Dr. Pramod Kumar Joshi, Agricultural Economist, Director for South Asia, International Food Policy Research Institute, Shri Ashok Gulati, Agricultural Economist and former Chairman of the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, Shri Anil Ghanwat, President Shetkari Sanghatan, is constituted for the purpose of listening to the grievances of the farmers relating to the farm laws and the views of the government and to make recommendations. And they are also directed that the report has to be submitted to the court within 2 months from the date of its first sitting. So what are the three farm laws? And now we'll understand. The Indian Agriculture Acts of 2020, often referred to as the Farm Bills, are three acts initiated by the Parliament of India. In September 2020, the Lok Sabha approved the bills on 17th of September 2020 and the Rajya Sabha on 20th of September 2020, and the bill became law as soon as or on the day when the President of India gave his assent on 27th of September 2020. So these farm bills are now law, which has been stayed by the Supreme Court until further orders. First farm law, titled the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020. It deals with the trade areas of farmers' produce. It permits sale and purchase of farm produce outside the premises of APMC mandis without any market fee, cess or levy. It includes electronic trading and e-commerce of farm produce. So by this, this act actually allows the farmers to sell its products out of APMC mandis, that is agricultural produce markets committees, and it also includes electronic trading and e-commerce of farm produce. And the best thing about this act is that a farmer do not have to pay any market fee or cess or levy if he wants to sell out his products out of these mandis. The act may hurt the interest of the middleman and affect state coffers, not at all the farmers. But this law is a major bone of contention. Although it is speculated that it will hurt the interest of the middlemen and affect the state coffers and not the farmers at all. But still, this law has become a major bone of contention. So this act has been the major bone of contention, and because of this act, the farmers are protesting that the other two acts must be taken back. The protesters believe that once the law comes into effect, the agricultural produce market committees will be abolished, ending their MSP benefits and all. So the concern is they do not want their MSP to be ended. Although MSP is not a law, it's an administrative act, but still they are under the apprehension that if the act comes into picture, then their MSP will be abolished and the APMC market will also get closed. Then what is MSP? Let us understand. MSPs, which began with the Green Revolution, is the price at which the government buys crops from farmers. It acts as a kind of guaranteed floor price aimed to prevent distress sale by farmers. So it is actually a kind of guaranteed floor price, like a fixed, the farmers will have to be paid on a guaranteed floor price, that is means at a fixed price. The government through the Food Corporation of India buys agricultural produce, primarily paddy and wheat, at MSP rates. So government is the main procurer of paddy and wheats. While government announces MSP for 23 major crops, setting them at 1.5 times the cost of cultivation to account for inflation, it mainly benefits paddy and wheat growers because the government procures only these two commodities in sufficiently large quantities. So, although MSP is provided for 23 major crops, but the government are the top buyers of the only two products, which is paddy and wheat. Then how is the new model different from the existing APMC system? APMC regulations require farmers to sell only sell to licensed middlemen in notified markets, usually in the same area where farmers reside, rather than in an open market. This limited farmers' ability to sell their harvest outside their local APMC. So APMC regulations are actually strict because it is only allowing the farmers the area in which they are staying to sell only to licensed middlemen. So over the years, however, these APMC driven markets had become barriers for farmers to get a fair price for their produce, as they were forced to sell it through these committees. Because they are actually till now, the farmers have been forced to sell their commodities only to these committees. But there is evidence to demonstrate that buyers in APMC behave in cartels, and there are also evidence to suggest that these APMC, these committees actually behave, they work in cartels. The APMC, they actually control the market in simple sense. The APMC system primarily rests upon a commission-based network. Only licensed intermediaries can operate in these markets, which is actually a barrier for the farmers to sell their products. These intermediaries include commission agents, wholesale transporters, railway agents and storage agents, among others. And the market is actually controlled by licensed intermediaries, and they are actually forcing the farmers to sell the products to them only and none else. So what are the fears among farmers on MSP? Farmers fear that the new law would imply that the government will eventually stop buying from them at MSPs, leaving farmers at the mercy of large corporations. So this is a myth, and this is the main fear among the farmers. They think that if MSP stop, then the government will stop buying products from them, and they have to survive at the mercy of large corporations. The government, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has time and again assured the farmers that the MSP system will continue, but the farmers want it hardwired in law, despite the fact that MSP has always been a part of administrative decisions, not an act. So this is the main point to remember. MSP is not a law, but it is actually an administrative act, and the farmers actually think that although they are forced to sell their products to a definite intermediary, but still they are selling their products to the governments directly, and governments are the top buyers of their agricultural produce. But if APMC markets are abolished, then whatever price they have been getting till now, they will not get in future. Why cannot the government enact a law on MSP? So this is the main question. So why government is not enacting a law, not assuring the farmers by enacting a law that MSP will be secured? Because many economists say that a law mandating MSP as the floor price for purchases of 23 major staples could be inflationary. Could be inflationary, that means the agricultural produce or the the grains will the prices of these grains will be increased and can also lead to inflation. A private trader buying wheat and paddy at MSP every year would simply get translated into higher prices for final consumers, and ultimately the consumers have to suffer. Then second farm law, named Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act 2020, provides a legal framework for contract farming. So under this act or under this law, a legal framework has been provided for contract farming, in which the farmers can enter into agreements with agribusiness firms, retailers or exporters for their produce at a mutually agreed price before the planting seasons. So according to the law, the farmers can also they can enter into an agreement with the top agribusiness firms or retailers or exporters about what will be the rate or which rate they are actually willing to sell, and it has to be done before the planting seasons. The act also outlines a dispute redressal mechanism, but the farmers have issues with some clauses. Though the government has promised to look into the clauses, the farmers want the law to go. Although this is a good act, but still the farmer doesn't want this law to continue. Third farm law is an amendment to an existing act called Essential Commodities Amendment Act 2020. The law scraps the centre's powers to impose stock holding limits on food items like cereals, pulses, potato, onion, edible oilseeds and oils, removing them from the list of essential commodities. So these agricultural products, according to the act, will not be in the list of essential commodities except under extraordinary conditions or in the case of a steep price hike. The law won't affect the farmers adversely, but along with the first two laws, the farmers are not willing to accept this law. Because of the first law, in which there is no guarantee for MSP and there is a provision for abolition of APMC, the farmers have in fear about the other two laws, and they also want these laws to go along with the first one. So unless there are specific reasons for not opening, then we will deal with the next case law, in which the Supreme Court has directed that unless there are any specific reasons for not opening, all Anganwadi centers beyond the containment zones should be made functional by all the states, union territories at an early date. So the case citation is Deepika Jagataram Sahani versus Union of India. The three-judge bench comprising Ashok Bhushan, R. Subhash Reddy and M. R. Shah justices addressed the instant petition questioning the closure of the Anganwadi centers across the country. The bench said government has a constitutional obligation to preserve human rights. So a petition has been filed in the Supreme Court, in which it has been challenged that since lockdown, Anganwadi centers are not functional, and Anganwadi centers play an important role in providing nutrition or other essential services to the needy ones. So let us see the background. Through the Anganwadi center, supplementary nutrition to pregnant women, lactating mothers, adolescent girls and children up to the age of 6 years were being provided, which fulfilled the state objective of holistic development of children under 6 years and to provide food and nutrition to the beneficiaries as mandated by Article 47 of the Constitution. After spread of COVID-19, Anganwadi centers were closed throughout the country in March 2020. Distribution of special nutrition and other benefits being essential services were permitted to be conducted by Anganwadi staff by resorting to take home ration. But due to COVID-19, Anganwadi centers were closed throughout the country in March 2020. Lockdown was lifted by the competent authority in phased manner and gradually specified activities were permitted to be opened. But even during the post-lockdown period, beneficiaries, children, pregnant women and lactating mothers continued to suffer due to non-opening of Anganwadi in various states. So before the lockdown, Anganwadi centers were working fine as they were providing supplementary nutrition to pregnant women, lactating mothers, adolescent girls and children up to the age of 6 years. But it has to be closed due to COVID-19 in March 2020, and even after the lockdown was lifted in a phased manner, but still the functions of like Anganwadi centers have been suspended or kept in suspension. So the observation, considering above mentioned facts, the bench expressed inadequate supply of nutritious food to the citizens, more particularly to children and women, would affect their health. Therefore, the same shall be in violation of their fundamental right to health or right to live with dignity guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution. So it actually, in short, the Supreme Court said that said that the inadequate supply of nutritious food to the citizens, more particularly to children and women, is actually a violation of fundamental right to health or right to live, which has been guaranteed under Article 21. And the bench said the services provided by the Anganwadi centers were essential services. Then the next one is, in this case, Supreme Court has said that open surface water resources including rivers are lifeline of human civilization, and it also directed Central Pollution Control Board to submit a priority wise list of municipalities along the river Yamuna which have been found to be the most polluted. So this case law is very important from the environmental law, or say most important in environmental law. So the case citation is Delhi Jal Board versus State of Haryana. In a case regarding increased ammonia levels in river Yamuna due to discharge of pollutants, the 3-judge bench of S.A. Bobde, Chief Justice, and A.H. Bopanna and V. Ramasubramanian, Justice, stated it has become necessary to compare the costs of prevention and control of water pollution against its effect on human health, including treatment, indirect economic cost and damage to flora and fauna. So it is in this actually Supreme Court expressed its grief about the pollution in river Yamuna and also the rise in the level of ammonia due to the discharge of pollutants. So let us see further. Remediation of polluted rivers. So after dwelling upon constitutional and legislative mandates, the court expressed that Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974 was enacted with an objective to provide for the prevention and control of water pollution and maintaining or resorting of wholesomeness of water. Reliance was placed by the Supreme Court on the case of Paryavaran Suraksha Samiti versus Union of India. So whatever the decisions have been held in this case have been upheld by the Supreme Court or reiterated by the Supreme Court in this case, where the court had emphasized over duties of municipalities regarding the public health, sanitation, conservancy and solid waste management. So on this point, the judgment has been reiterated. So this has been the end of this session and I hope you all have liked it. So now we have completed the most important judgments of Supreme Court of the last 6 months, and in the next session I will be discussing with you the top or the best judgments of Supreme Court of the year 2020. So do not forget to give a like, share, subscribe to the channel if you want to watch more such videos. Till we meet the next time, thank you and have a nice day.